Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webcast, Managed Service Providers versus Managed Security Service Providers. How do they differ? Presented by Ray & Associates, a top 100 regional CPA and business consulting firm with offices across Ohio. My name is Imani Fields, and I'll be walking you through a few housekeeping items for today's webinar. First, if you have any questions during today's presentation, you may enter them into the chat box on your screen. We will try to answer as many questions as we can throughout the presentation and at the conclusion of today's presentation. However, to be respectful of your time, we know that we will not be able to get to them all. Therefore, following today's webinar, we will review all questions and send out the answers via email as soon as we can. If you would like a copy of today's slides, you will find that they're available in the handout section of the webinar dashboard on your computer screen. Today's presenters are Sean Richardson and Jorn Backstrom. Sean is a principal at Ray, as well as a retired U.S. Army Master Sergeant and former cybersecurity advisor to the Army Reserve Cyber Operations Group and the U.S. Cyber Command. With more than 25 years of information systems engineering and cybersecurity operations experience, he leads the firm's cybersecurity and data protection services team. Sean is committed to helping guide the small to mid-sized businesses of America down the path of entrepreneurial freedom without the risk of compromise. With more than 15 years of experience, Jorn Backstrom, cyber consultant at Ray & Associates, works diligently to maintain and support clients' IT infrastructure. Jorn's mission is to understand your company's goals and provide IT solutions for your organization. His areas of expertise include server migrations, networks and firewalls, backup and disaster recovery, virtualization, and cloud-based services. And now I will pass it over to you guys.
Thank you, Imani. Good morning, everyone. We are honored to be with you this morning. Jordan and I have spent a lot of time crafting this presentation for you. There's a lot of information here, so we'll try to get ourselves through this quickly, but also methodically, because we want to kind of send a message this morning, and you know, the real call out here during our presentation is, you know, what is a managed service provider, and what is the difference between it and a managed security service provider? So let me, before we start, let me pass it over to Jorn and kind of give an overview of his background, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So I'm Jorn Backstrom, a manager with Ray Cyber Services. I've been in IT consulting for small to medium-sized businesses for the last 19 years. Recently became a part of Ray back in November of last year through an acquisition, and I am based in the Worcester office, so happy to be here.
Awesome. So we'll go over our agenda. Thank you, Jorn. So let's go over our agenda. So our goal here today is to kind of explain the difference between a managed service provider and a managed security service provider. Not only the differences, but there's benefits to both as well, depending on what type of company you are, and also the size of the company and so on. I will say that based upon where we are in the current threat landscape, there is a paradigm shift, and that paradigm shift is happening and has started to happen over the last 8 to 10 years, and that's all centered around, just the threats are overwhelming. So we'll talk about a little bit about that as well in our SIM and MDR piece. So we'll be discussing the mission and purpose of MSPs and MSSPs. We'll talk about the CIA triad and its importance within information security and what the differences are. And then some of these terms you may or may not have heard before: SIM, Security Information Event Manager, and MDR, Manage, Detect, and Respond, all related to active continuous monitoring security operations. And then finally, we will talk about our approach to managed security information technology, and that's our sub-organization underneath Ray Cyber Services, MSIP. Next slide. We'd like to add this statement in. This is based on the premise of the Ray way. It's the things that are important to us as members of our organization and as ambassadors. Quality, taking ownership, more importantly, listening fuels action, and just never stop learning, because we want our clients to see that, but more importantly, we display that through action, because the threat landscape is just ever evolving. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Jordan. He's going to kind of give his overview of what a managed service provider is. Jordan, take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly go over managed service providers versus security service providers. Basically, an MSP is going to be your outsourced IT department or IT provider. They're going to, provide help desk support, fix problems with hardware and software. They may come in and stand up your network, install new computers, perform maintenance on a server, upgrade networking equipment, switches and firewalls. They also provide, software support. So, you have glitches or patches needed for software. They're gonna help you with that. So they're basically your IT administration. The main focus for them is, ensuring easy access to your information and your data, and the management of that information, and your network and computer systems. There isn't much with an MSP. There isn't much risk analysis, so they're not going to focus on threats. They're going to be more reactive versus proactive. But they do, they are necessary. They improve efficiencies and cut expenses, and they keep the lights on. Basically, they keep your networks and your computers up and running. So next slide, please. Now a managed security services provider is a little different. So they're more focused on basically your data and the security of your data, in IT security. The function is to ensure the security of your systems and your data going forward. And they're really, they can do that through many different ways. One would be, a SOC, a Security Operations Center, and Sean will kind of cover these later. Another tool or system that an MSSP would use is that managed detection and response, like Sean mentioned earlier. And a third is a SIM, a Security Information System and Event Management. So, when they are focused on your data, an MSSP is actively, threat hunting. So they're providing visibility into the network for threats and vulnerabilities. They're focusing on risk, and they're also providing incident response, monitoring incidents, triaging them, determining the risk level of each one, and then remediating them through network systems and software. Next slide.
Awesome. I appreciate that explanation, Jordan. And to add to that, that remediation piece is key, because what you're trying to do from an MSSP's perspective, they're trying to find the threats before they happen, right? So correlation of data, and that's really what that SIM is doing, is correlating all the information across the network, whether it's from hardware endpoints, servers, firewalls, and so on. This next slide is explaining. If you'll notice on the previous slides, we had confidentiality, integrity, and availability highlighted during these explanations. Again, just for clarity, there are MSPs and MSSPs out there that do a lot of very similar things, but they are very different. Just to be clear, There are MSPs that focus on IT security, but the clear difference is the integrity and the confidentiality of the networks, the data, and the information. So depicted on the slide here is just kind of an explanation of what those principles of information security are. Again, that MSSP, that managed security provider, is giving you that continuous monitoring, eyes on glass, but more importantly, that overview of what the security posture and the security health of your organization is. We'll move on from here, and we'll talk about the differences between a little bit more on the next few slides here. So a managed service provider, in most cases, there are organizations called ITOs, so information technology outsourcers, that don't play in the value-added reseller space. So in layman's terms, they don't sell products. They simply focus on a lot of the things that Jorn mentioned earlier, centered around keeping the lights on, making sure that the hardware and the software and the infrastructure is up and running, and it's efficient, and basically being an extension of your IT department, or in some cases, your IT department as a whole, because you only have maybe one or two people inside your organization supporting IT, and a lot of times those folks are wearing multiple hats. All right, so what's depicted here in this Venn diagram is that center focus there is the management, the implementations, and outsourcing of the different IT functions. Next slide. Whereas in a managed service provider, they're focusing on those outer two layers, and they're bringing them together. So a continuous monitoring with the focus of, to stop breaches. Ultimately, everyone's heard the word breach, unfortunately, over the last, more prominent over the last couple of years because of the pandemic with COVID and a lot of the attacks that have happened as of late. That is something ultimately the MSSP is focused on, is to prevent those breaches. Next slide. All right, let me pause here before we go into an explanation of SIM and MDR. If there are any questions, please type them in the chat there. Take a minute or so and just pause. And if there's any questions, please use the chat box to type them in. And again, just to just kind of recap on that first section, there's a lot of value in both types of information technology organizations, and so what we're doing now is we're going to step into the realm of explaining a little bit more what a managed security service provider does, and what their capabilities are. But for most of those the attendees out there that are maybe in a small to medium-sized business, don't really understand, or maybe not as focused on these areas, because IT and IT security frankly hasn't really been a priority until the last few years because of what's happened within the threat landscape. There's a lot of ransomware attacks that have happened within manufacturing, within healthcare, and it doesn't really matter the size of the business. And so just to kind of again drive home as a precursor to this next segment, it's important to kind of take a little bit different approach and a little bit different mindset as a business leader and also business owner of looking at information security as a priority, reducing the risk, having annual risk assessments performed by trusted advisors that can come in, understand your business, and understand what where you're going and how to grow you safely. So I'll go ahead and transition over here to the next section, which is what is a SIM and MDR? What's that mean? So a security information event management system basically takes all of the endpoints and all of the firewalls and routers and switches, servers, anything that's connected to the network, and it takes the information that comes from them in simple layman's terms, their logs and information that come out of those hardware and software platforms, and it's dumped into and imported into contextual log aggregator, if you will. It sounds complicated, but simply put, it basically comes in and brings all that information in and starts learning your information, the information on your network, to determine, is there a potential indicator of a compromise? You'll hear the term IOC, indicator of compromise. And if that indicator of compromise leads to an event that could then lead to information or investigative data that shows that ultimately there's a potential breach within the network. So a lot of information here, but simply put, that SIM is really, really key. And there are ways, simple SIMs that are out there that can be utilized within small businesses and medium-sized businesses. And the approach to bringing all that information in and how you manage it is absolutely the key there. Next slide. All right, so what is MDR? Manage, Detect, Response. So these are active activities that are going on within the network and actually investigating and trying to determine and lead to, is there an indicator of any information that might be bad going on inside your network, or inside not just your network, but your information systems. A lot of folks that are likely on this webinar, their single source of truth, or this single most critical information system in their business, is QuickBooks, or some sort of financial information system, or an ERP system, for instance. Jordan and I are helping actually a couple of our customers with onboarding a new ERP system, and if that ERP system, that which holds all of their manufacturing information and all their numbers as it relates to products and so on, if that information system was compromised, then it would cripple that company's bring it to their knees, basically. So an MDR, what it does is it gives you an opportunity to go out and hunt for information, do research, find and take this information and find behaviors that potentially lead to an indicator of some sort of compromise, okay? And then lastly, God forbid, if something happens inside your network, which in most cases folks don't know what to do at that point, then it's having the availability of providing some sort of response and remediation to the said events, okay? Next slide. Go back one. All right. So now we're going to transition to kind of our approach to things, and what our vision is we got it all tied back to the Ray Way and what our firm's strategic vision is, and approach to our our client base and just businesses in general. Yet, first thing you have to start with is learning the business, understanding what makes that business tick, but more importantly, how can you help that business grow them safely through coming in, performing risk assessments, identifying the gaps within the business, and helping them remediate it, not just sending them some sort of report that says, hey, you've got these gaps inside your servers or in your networks, or maybe there's a policy that you don't have written that helps support that, the reduction of risk within that your information system, or maybe it's HR onboarding, new staff members coming on board, how you bring them on, create new accounts or whatever the case may be. So building a security model. All right, and we use a model that's based on the NIST cybersecurity framework, and then once you build that security model, actually actively having real people, monitor the maturity of that security posture and the health within the business. Again, notice I said business. This is not just a technical or a quote unquote cyber approach. This is a business approach. This is the best business approach, taking that trust-oriented approach. And so you'll see in this next slide a little bit more of an explanation of what's happened over the last couple of decades. And that is the key here is there's been a paradigm shift. A lot of MSPs have focused on availability and not confidentiality and integrity of data, information systems, and networks up to this point. Again, for clarity, there are some MSPs and ITOs out there, information technology outsourcers, that have shifted their business approach to add security to their services, and some do well, some do very well. But the key takeaway here is you've got to have somebody watching. You got to have somebody that is that trusted advisor, that subject matter resource that you can call on a moment's notice and say, Sean, Jorn, Amani, we got, I think, a problem, and can you explain this to me? And so again, this trusted, this trust-oriented approach combined with a security-first approach is absolutely key to your business's success and protection in months and years to come. Next slide. All right, so simply put, what we're saying is that the combined Venn diagrams from earlier really is where we've taken our team and our clients and businesses. Is we don't just sell somebody a product. We don't just come in and say, hey, quote unquote, you need to do this. It is learning the business. It is helping the business reduce the security risk within the business by performing risk assessments and building a security model that grows with their business. And frankly, security models are different depending on the size of the business. The complexities potentially reduce based upon the size, but the security controls are the same. Okay, so again, managed security and IT services, our team's subgroup MSIT is focused on coming in, learning the business, and then providing the capabilities of potential security monitoring, and not only that, a trusted advisor that goes along with it. Next slide. So I had this slide in every single one of our presentations, because in 99% of the cases it's pretty self-explanatory. You have the bad guy, guy or gal. Some of the folks that I used to manage, 440 hackers that all had a special set of skills that went off and did this for the greater good, and the good majority of those hackers were females, and the females were far more greater in capabilities and just mindset, and I just love working with them. But all that to be said, that bad person, that threat actor out there on the network and across the world, they're looking for those three things. They're looking for your identity on the left. They're looking for passwords, ways to gain information about your identities, gain information about your business, gain information about what type of business you're doing and providing your customers. And then in the middle, that's kind of the heart of depicting the heartbeat of the business, and which also flows down to the livelihood of the business, which are employees and families and a multitude of things. And then last but not least, money. I mean, it's all money driven. Most of you likely saw the public statement made by the threat actors on the latest pipeline ransomware, which came from an organization based out of Russia, and that statement was made. Simply put, look, we did this not for any political gain, not for any statement as it relates to trying to make some sort of statement to support any other country or any third party. It was simply for money. And so when the day begins and the day ends, folks, that's all these threat actors are trying to do, is take away your access and then charge you money to gain access back to your information systems. And so it's so important to start with just having a trust advisor come in and perform a risk assessment, perform some sort of gap analysis, and determine whether whether you're in a position where you can start building a cybersecurity posture within your information systems security plan, and then move in a direction where it's going to grow with your business. One of the things I'd like to do, if you would, Amani, go back to slide number 12, if you would. What is MDR? A lot of these things on these two, inside these two Venn diagrams here, are completely unknown to most of you on this webinar today. I think, to me and to our team, it's most important to identify these and call these different functions out, because up until this point, meaning in the last few years, a small to medium-sized business, a mid-market business on down, really didn't have the focus, but also couldn't afford an organization to come in and provide these services and software and so on, these tools, if you will, because it's so expensive, right? There's different ways to go about that, and our approach again is we want to come in and learn the business, but more importantly, provide these services in a very simple form that is accepted, but more importantly, you can digest it as a business leader and as a business owner, and not be overwhelmed with a bunch of technical jargon and information, if that makes sense. An example will be, and Jordan can touch on this without giving the client's name, but there's a manufacturing company that we have that we currently, that Jordan supported within his company, and then of course brought through with us within the acquisition, and they basically take these pumps and repurpose them, and they're doing business all across the world, and the business owner, as of late, sent hey Jordan, didn't he not send you like an email about some sort of hack or information security threat or something like that within the last couple of weeks? I think we were talking about that last week in our call.
Yeah, he definitely reached out to me. He's concerned about cybersecurity and his data and maintaining his business and keeping it up and running, and so we're having talks with him about what can we do and how can we protect his business. So
absolutely, and so maybe give it a little bit of overview of the size of the business, the complexities or non-complexities, to give the viewers a little bit of a taste of tying it into the message we're trying to send, that you don't really need to be this big organization. You can be any size to be able to perform these services.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody's a threat in today's age. Ransomware is for sale. You just go out and buy it and just try to distribute it. So, there are more and more threats, more and more attackers out there every day, and they're looking for any loophole, any risk, any vulnerability they can they can access and exploit. And so it doesn't matter the size of the business. You can be, a few computers up to 1,000 computers or more. I mean, they're looking at everybody right now and trying to find and trying to get the money, and that's the main thing.
Right. And so in this case, we'll just use the first name. This owner, Steve, he reached out to Jordan, and I actually had the pleasure of having a face-to-face conversation with him. And the size of this organization is less than 50 employees. And so he sees the value. He recognizes the risk. He recognizes that I have a livelihood to protect here, but more importantly, I also know that I'm doing some business across the pond and things like that. And so it's important to talk about these things on this slide here and what does that mean to my business? And you could do it in ways of not overwhelming them with a bunch of tech jargon. I will tell you a quick story. One of my former commanders stood in front of our entire group, and one of the last parting words when he left the organization and relieved it, or he passed his command over, was, looking at all the cyber warriors and basically and made the statement. And this applies to civilian and folks like trusted advisors like us as well. And that is we always used to, likely there's folks on the call today that have heard the term, well, I can't share that information with you because, that's classified, or, I told you I have to kill you, or something like that, something that effect, right? That's privileged information, if you will. And one of the best advice statements he made is you are all very smart people, and you all have the capability of going to a business owner, going to an individual, and in the context of his statement, to a civilian, and saying and sharing with them what in fact it is that you do for a living, without a bunch of tech jargon and a bunch of information that's privileged and so on. And so basically what I'm saying here is as a business owner, as a business leader, it's important that you're able to take this information, sit down with a trusted advisor, and learn it in simplest of terms, and find ways to leverage teams that can support you in these endeavors. One of the other things I wanted to go back to, if you could go back to slide 8, Amani, if you would, back to the CIA triad. Hopefully, as we've gone through this slide deck, you kind of get an understanding of the importance of the information security principles here. The biggest takeaway and why we exist as Ray Cyber Services and Data Protection is it's all about the data. It's all about reducing risk to the business. And where is your data? How can we protect it? How can we protect your identities? And frankly, that's what's most important, because the threat actors, that's what they want. As Jordan alluded to, it's for sale. I mean, your identity is for sale. That's no secret. But more importantly, take it a step further, who do you work for? Where do you shop? Things like that. And it's not just an individual. It's a group of individuals, maybe in a business, that are working on a certain project or a certain, widget that you're creating. And so it's important to really, really understand what this slide means in its simplest of terms. It's the confidentiality and integrity of information systems, data, networks, and then the availability piece is that bottom core that you have IT organizations like MSPs help support you, keep the lights on, make sure they're up and working, make sure there's efficiencies, and so on. One of the final things I want to share with you guys today, and I don't unfortunately have any information in my deck today. I should have put at least some information as it relates to those companies that are doing business with government. And so if we just go, you can actually go back to go to our conclusion slide. That's fine. Amani, thank you. So there's a new certification out by the government. It is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, ran by the DoD. And Ray Cyber Services, we are registered practitioners. We have a team that is led by Paul Hugenberg, who's my direct partner, my principal partner, and also manager Ty Wittenberg. And basically, in essence, what that talks about is businesses have to have some sort of framework of controls as it relates to how their information systems are accessed, but also monitored. A lot of the things we've talked about today, a lot of the things that both MSPs, managed service providers, and managed security service providers provide to organizations that do business with the government. Okay, so just a little plug there on CMMC, and you reach out to Paul Hugenberg or Ty Wittenberg, both Bergs on the team there, for more information. And go and check out their cyber chats on LinkedIn. Go check out their webinars. They've got several webinars that they're doing, just like Jorn and I are doing here. Our conclusion here before we start asking questions or allow for open dialogue questions here is just reiterating, as ambassadors, the quality counts. We want to listen. We want to understand your business. We want to understand, how you want to grow your business. These are some of the most important qualities to me personally, and to us as a whole. So Monty, I will pause right here. We got about 20 minutes left, and I'll shift it back over to you, control back over to you.
Awesome. And if you guys have any questions, be sure to put them in the question box. It looks like we have 2 here so far. So the first one is does Ray offer both MSP and MSSP services?
So that's a great question. So yes, but we have, our program is called MSIT, Managed Security Information Technology Services. So we lead with security first. It starts with a risk assessment. Our GRC team has a well-oiled program that comes in, identifies the gaps, identifies vulnerabilities, helps you close them. That's the biggest takeaway. Like, we're not handing you a report. We're actually helping you remediate those. The only caveat is that we are a CPA and business consulting firm. And so those businesses that we as a business, Ray and Associates, perform attestation services like audits, then we can't do both. We can provide you with a remediation plan, but we can't help you because of independence there. All right. But to answer the question simply put, yes, we just take a little bit different approach because, it's not, we don't want to be everything to everybody. And more importantly, I think the biggest takeaway is what we've learned, and Jordan can talk about this a little bit too, is we come into some of these businesses that these are family-owned businesses. They've been ran, very well for years, and they don't want to spend a bunch of money on IT, and in some cases they don't need to, unless of course there's a potential security risk. You want to give some examples, Jordan?
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's been, numerous times when we've set up meetings with some, accounting clients or non-accounting clients, walk in to just discuss security and discuss data protection, things like that. And in our initial meeting, we could do a quick scan of the network and find gaping holes that are sitting there just waiting for somebody to walk into and attack. And it's happened numerous times. And these are people, these are small clients that are using an MSP, and up to larger clients that have in-house IT departments. And it goes back to, that CIA triad, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, you know, a lot of those, a lot of this, can be attacked or violated intentionally, but also unintentionally by, human error or mistakes or coding issues or inadequate security controls or education, so we walk into these clients and can help them immediately and close some of these gaps.
So yeah, Amani, great question. Yes, we provide those services, but we take the security first approach.
Awesome. We have a few more questions that have come in.
Awesome.
Do you work with existing MSPs to bridge coverage gaps instead of displacing existing vendors?
I love it. Love that question. Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. And I'll give you an example. So again, we've shared with you, we lead with that information security risk assessment, or build out our what we call Ignite Your Compliance program. We're actually helping them build a framework, helping them build policies and so on. And when we perform that risk assessment, we're having those conversations with those MSPs. Why? Because that is that company or client's trusted advisor currently. So why would we come in and try to displace them and replace them when in fact that client or company trusts them currently? The only exception there is if there are grave, very important, critical points that are missed, and there has been some times where clients actually bring us in and they say, hey, look, I don't know whether our MSP is actually doing the functions that were signed. We signed a contract with them, and we just don't know if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Can you review that for us? And so we'll provide that feedback, and ultimately it's the decision is made by the business. So that is a great question. We've had cases, in both cases, where we come in and do the information. Matter of fact, we're doing one with a company right now where the company's smaller, but they have a very large impact within the industry. They're in the weapons industry, and so their current managed service provider, which happens to be a person they've trusted for years, they maintain that person, and so we're working with them. So we're providing security services and oversight, while that person, or in this case, this MSP, is providing that base foundation of availability, like we talked about earlier within the CIA triad.
Awesome. The next question here is kind of like a clarification. It says, MSSP is more proactive in preventing breaches versus MSP, which are more proactive in detecting breaches. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, so I'll let you take this one, Jordan. Feel free to chime in, but yes, it is a fair statement. You want to elaborate a little bit, Jordan?
Yeah, I'd say it's a fair statement. But MSSPs are there to detect and respond, where MSP is not. They're not there to detect security incidents. So they're more, they're going to provide the availability and not security or integrity or confidentiality. They're going to keep the lights on, basically. They're going to keep your systems up and running. They may detect hardware issues. They may detect network issues, but not security events. So good question.
Yeah, great question. And I'll elaborate. I have good friends that have MSPs and have had MSPs for the last 20 plus years. Some of them operating in the largest of metropolitan areas. And a good MSP will tell you, while we provide security oversight up into the point where they may have a service internally that does very similar things as it relates to manage, detect, respond, and then remediate. But the good majority of the majority of the good ones will tell you that having an organization that is always watching and is correlating information and is threat hunting is a great relationship to have. And the one that comes to mind that's in the Columbus area, he and I meet on a very frequent basis. He has a partner there, so he does what he does best in MSP, and then he has a partner that comes in and provides that security oversight. So that is a wonderful question. That's a great question.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. The next question we have here is, are managed security services really needed by a small business? Am I really at risk? What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. So, Jordan, I'll let you start, and I'll kind of tap in again.
So yes, it is absolutely necessary. Everybody's a target. I like to tell people, go into work one day and turn off all your computers and tell me how much work gets done. So it's a scary environment right now, and people are actively out there, trying to disrupt business, trying to disrupt data and steal your data. So yeah, everybody's a target. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. So that I hear in that question the size is important. I have a small business. Are these services necessary? I obviously tied to, okay, these services likely are expensive and or more expensive than a monthly reoccurring cost that a managed service provider is providing. And I will tell you that one of the things that we love to do is again craft our solutions specific to the business. So let's just say you have less than 20 employees, you only have 10 computers, maybe 5 to 10 computers, and a local server. Well, what's not sustainable is unless of course your annual revenue is exponential and you're doing really well because you have a special niche service or product that you're offering. What we like to do is our team comes in and analyzes a special program where we can minimize the risk, all centered around that control set that we put, that control framework we put in play, and then we just apply the necessary tools, because that business may only have personal identifiable information as data, which while is very important to protect, but maybe they're just creating a widget. And I've had business owners tell me make this statement: look, there's nothing quote unquote secret about what it is we do here. Like, recipes, this, that, and the other. Look, if somebody wants to take my recipe, take it, whatever. The biggest takeaway here is the statement that Jordan just made. And that is, imagine the day when you walk in and your systems are unavailable. How much work can be done? So again, just to drive, that's just great questions today. I can't, wow. That's another great question.
Awesome. So we have one final question here. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. It says, does your MSP department handle complicated internet phone systems?
So can you repeat that question for me? I'm sorry.
Sure. It says, does MSP departments handle complicated internet phone systems? So great question. Most of them do. Most of them either have an internet phone system that they offer, or they provide support to support them. I'd be interested in knowing more about what determines a complicated internet phone system, but likely they're meaning some sort of voice over IP system that's a monthly service or cloud-based or what have you. But to answer the question directly, most MSPs should be able to support that. You'll find some MSPs that they'll
you may hear this statement, well, we don't have that phone system, but we have this phone system. And then next thing you know, you're having a budget conversation. And again, notice the difference there. What we've done, or what we've heard in that conversation is that now you can't provide the support that I need, but you're willing to sell me something different. And so we don't want to do that, right? It's important to us that we support them where they're at and identify the gaps in the security issues, and remediate those gaps, help them remediate those gaps. And only if there's a case where there's an end of life device or software or something needs updated, then we can make that recommendation to pivot to a different service or a piece of hardware or what have you. But yet another great question. And yes, most MSPs will support phone systems, internet phone systems.
Awesome. We have another question here. It says, if we were introduced to Ray as a security first firm, what does the first project look like? I believe you stated that a risk assessment is normally the first step. Are you simply giving me a report and leaving, or do you help figure out the best steps and assist with implementation?
Yeah, Jordan, you want to start, and we'll wrap that up.
Yeah, I think we touched on this a little bit earlier. We would definitely start with the risk assessment, and then provide the report and information to the business owner, and at that point determine what risks are most prevalent, and provide the remediation from there. And as Sean talked about earlier, the attestation clients, we cannot do both for those. So if you're a Ray audit client, we cannot do a risk assessment and provide the remediation. We can do one or the other.
Yeah, and I'll expound on that. And so that report, and I think I shared a little bit about it earlier. Like it's not just passing a report across the desk to the business owner and the stakeholders, right? We have this placemat report that has actions behind it. It has real numbers. And what does that mean to you? So one of the biggest takeaways is we collect information based upon the gaps you have within the business and tie it back to a dollar figure. So it's no secret we use a formula that it's based on calculations of many factors, but simply put, we can tell you in dollars and cents, if you were compromised, how much that would affect your business monthly, annually, over a period of time. The biggest takeaway, again, as I mentioned this earlier, is we're building out a program where we can actually start taking action right away. So we're listing out projects of what Jordan just said it best, like what are the most key critical things we need to address right away. And then we take action and help the organization do that. And so a lot of times that means building out a new network, or helping with applying the security controls that come with the NIST cybersecurity framework, and helping you build out those policies that tie back to. I can't stress enough how important, whether you're a small organization or a large organization, how much policy drives change within a business, and taking those policies and procedures and allowing it to gain traction within the business, and that traction leads to results. So another great final question. Really grateful for all these questions, because it's important to drive home. While both these organizations have similarities, they're very different, and they can, in fact, one of the questions that came out of today, they can in fact work together, or they can work apart, or in our case, if we come in and analyze the environment and provide that security oversight, and you need a new firewall or whatever, we'll provide that for you too. But that's not our most important take away from this is you know, highlighting the differences and the qualities within the two organizations, the two different approaches.
Thanks, guys. We had some really great questions. That is it. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we close it off today?
Oh, final thought today would be rain, go away. I would love for it to just be sunny, and heck, I'd even take clouds. But no, it's been an honor to be able to do this. I'm so grateful to be a part of this team. Grateful to speak to anyone. Jordan and I, feel free to give us a call, send us an email. We'll sit down, have a conversation, coffee, lunch, what have you. We want to learn your business and more importantly, help you protect it.
Awesome. Any final thoughts, Jordan?
I mean, if you're not going with us and not calling us, call your MSP or talk to your IT department, ask them about the CIA triad, you know, because we want your data to be secure and safe, bottom line. So that's it.
Great. All right. Thank you guys for joining us for today's webinar on managed service providers versus managed security service providers. How do they differ? We hope that the cyber team was able to provide you with some valuable insight in regards to best practices and potential solutions. If you sign off today and realize that you have additional questions, you're always welcome to reach out to any of the presenters directly. Thank you, and we hope you have a great day.